Good evening there, Bears fans, and welcome to CHGO Bears After Dark, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app and use code CHGO when you sign up. And what's going on, Bears fans? Will DeWitt, Greg Bragg Jr. here, and Mark Carman. Like I said, it's CHGO Bears After Dark. It's Monday night, which is the night of the week where I feel like I deserve a pay raise having to babysit these two. What's going on, guys?
That is messed up, Will. That is.
He's not wrong, though. He's not wrong.
That's a very aggressive way to start the show, but thank you, teacher / parent / coworker / everything else.
I was just saying, you guys were the one that told me I have to do that. Like, was it 2-3 weeks ago? You're the ones that said I have to keep you on the rails.
You do.
You put it on me. I didn't put it upon myself.
That's, with great power comes great responsibility, as Spider-Man once said. And if this goes off the rails, then we get to blame you. And I take none of the blame. That's how it works. Bada bing, bada boom.
Probably true that we did put that on you. And I just would like to personally express that I'd like an apology from Greg Braggs before the end of the show for his petulant behavior after Purdue lost to Northwestern, his other passion in life, to the great Northwestern Wildcats. But I'll just, we're here for an hour. Let's see what happens here, Will.
I refuse. I let him come on my post game show I did about it. That's it. That's the only olive branch I'm giving him. Aside from that, after further review, the refs just completely out of control. Now I'm seeing clips of Chris Collins pulling on our players on the sidelines. What is this? What kind of operation you got running over there at Welsh Ryan?
NCAA tournament operation, buddy. That's what we got rolling.
Greg, that's 2 rough weeks in a row for you, because I had you on Monday after the weekend before. Of course, IU beat the Boilermakers, and on Northwestern, man, talk about some
we beat the brakes off Nick's Iowa Hawkeyes, and I noticed he's not here tonight. The one guy I had bragging rights over in the last 10 days, and he's the one that doesn't show up. I got to deal with you two who my Purdue Boilermakers lost to. This is crap.
Well, luckily, after right now, we can move on from the Boilermaker talk and focus on some Chicago Bears. Okay. I think that'll help a little bit, right?
Yes, it will. And I'm sure it will help the listeners, because I'm sure they get tired of hearing me and Mark talk about this every time. But it is exciting. It's exciting. March is upon us, which means spring is coming and nice weather like we had today.
It was a fantastic day out. Absolutely.
I want to remind everybody that it's February the 13th. And I see you in the comments, Gary. We'll see your Hoosiers on Wednesday night in Evanston, buddy. Bring it on. Let's go. And by the way, it's good to be back on the After Dark. Will, good to see you, everybody. I'm very excited to recap the Super Bowl and take a look at what appears to perhaps be an emerging problem over there in Philadelphia, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to just kind of begin tonight's episode. Usually I think we kind of keep that main headline topic for later on the show, but it's so good, and I'm really excited to talk about it, that I want to begin tonight's show with it. And you kind of alluded to it there, Mark. Like, Jalen Hurts, he looks like he's going to be a big problem for the Bears. Obviously, right now, the NFC goes through Philadelphia, goes through Jalen Hurts. And for him to put up the type of performance that we saw last night, 304 passing yards with a touchdown, another 70 yards on the ground, those 3 touchdowns too, and just the Eagles' ability to convert on those 4th and shorts, 3rd and shorts, and goal line situations with that really impressive QB sneak. It just adds another wrinkle to this offense that's already lethal and hard to stop. And so you posed a question to us earlier this afternoon, like, how big of a problem is this for the Bears, who I know they have a long way to go, but ideally sooner rather than later, and Jalen's going to be there still in Philadelphia. So I'll just kind of open up the floor there. Like, Mark, actually, I'll go to you first because you posed it. I'm assuming you think it's a pretty damn big problem.
Well, look, I mean, the guy's come in here, and in his rookie year contract, he's established himself as one of the elite quarterbacks in the game. I think a lot of Bears fans, myself, mainly, I'm looking in the mirror here, I was sleeping on him. I thought that he was more of a passenger on the Eagles train versus somebody who was a big part driving it. And he drove that thing last night. Their defense did nothing. He kept him in the game. They lost the game because he fumbled. I'd say that was the biggest reason. Huge momentum switch there. You could have had a commanding lead at halftime. And by the way, the Chiefs might have come back because Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. So that was a huge play in the game. But I was supremely impressed, and this guy has the mental side of it too, so he's only going to get better. They've got weapons too. It'll get a little more challenging with the salary cap for Philly going forward here, and they're going to lose guys this offseason. But I just think he ain't Aaron Rodgers. Let's not go that crazy. But I think this is something that if the Bears, as you just said it, Will, if the Bears are going to get there someday sooner than later, they're going to have to go through Philadelphia in all likelihood.
Yeah, and I know there's another equally, I guess, like intriguing, optimistic way to look at this, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But Greg, I just wanted to kind of gather, your thoughts on Jalen Hurts, what you saw last night, and just how you envision the future of the NFC and his place in it, and how it kind of affects the Bears.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable performance, and I do believe, had they not called the defensive holding penalty, that Jalen Hurts would have drove them right down the field. Now, whether or not they score a touchdown, I think there's a good chance of it, but at the very least, that game was going to overtime. I mean, you just knew whoever had the ball last was going to win. It felt like that kind of a game. So I had no doubt that Jalen Hurts was going to take him back down the field to score. And he had an unbelievable game on the ground, through the air. And for me, as somebody that, we have a dual threat quarterback here, that's all I could think about. It made me excited personally as a Bears fan. As you mentioned, we're going to talk about that. But for Jalen Hurts specifically, yeah, he's not going anywhere. A.J. Brown isn't going anywhere. And that's what you need. Devontae Smith, he's going to be there. And those are weapons. Dallas Goedert, I have to imagine, is going to stay there. But they're not going to be able to keep everybody. And this is where it starts to get tricky for them. Salary cap is an issue. And they have to, Jalen Hurts is entering his 4th year. So it's time to pay the piper. He just got his payday from that game. And so you're going to take a hit with that. They're going to lose some guys on defense. But at the same time, they're going to be a top team in the NFC, but we've seen it with other teams. The Bengals, not so much, but losing in the Super Bowl can take a hit to some teams. We'll see how they respond from that next year, but Jalen Hurts certainly has the right mentality where I have no doubt that he's going to be that new, we've all these years with, Aaron Rodgers and some of the great quarterbacks that are starting to leave now. Tom Brady's retiring and different guys. Now this is the next generation, right? Jalen Hurts is a part of that group. And the Eagles are certainly going to be a force to be reckoned with. But at the same time, like we talk about with Justin Fields, being a dual threat quarterback does have a shelf life. You can't be a dual threat quarterback forever. You can't run around forever. And I don't know if I just think, we saw it in the Bears game where he got landed on by Travis Gibson and he took a big hit and it affected him. It was a shoulder injury that he had to deal with for the rest of the year. And I just think, at some point, taking the amount of hits he's taking, it may be something that they have to monitor when it comes to him. But at the same time, Jalen Hurts, amazing performance. And no, I don't think he's going anywhere.
Can I do a quick trivia question for you too? Or maybe you know this stuff. Jalen Hurts is how old?
24.
Correct. Devontae Smith is how old?
22 maybe?
He's 20. A.J. Brown is how old?
A.J. Brown is 25.
That's right. 24, 24, and 25. They're in a pretty good position over there. It sucks that they lost, and like they probably didn't deserve to win the Super Bowl when they beat the Patriots, and they probably did deserve to win it last night, I would say, even though they lost. Certainly, I mean, football is, we got bounces and all that, but they should be around for a little while here. And how impressed were you guys with him throwing the football? Like the passes to Goddard,
ultra impressed. It was again, like when you think of Jalen Hurts, you think it's half and half, that dual threat. And yeah, he was able to do magic with both his arms and his legs last night. But I saw the comment right here from Kyle about that deep ball, like how pretty it was. And you're absolutely correct. Like that was just like, a dime to A.J. Brown down there in double coverage. And of course, A.J. making a great move to gain that separation at the very end of his route, man, had me just like enamored with it too. But yeah, no, he, on all accounts, is really impressed. I'm actually curious, So when you just look at like what he was able to do as like Eagles quarterback, not a lot of people are able to kind of like slow him down or stop him. But then you look at that Bears box score, and they only scored 25 points in that game. Like, does that, obviously this Bears defense, we know, is going to be completely overhauled, revamped, but just the fact, like from a schematic standpoint, the Bears were able to slow them down with not a lot of talent. Does that at least get you somewhat, I guess, slightly optimistic or hopeful?
Well, as I mentioned, for the future? Travis Gibson did injure him early on, and he stayed in there and tried to fight through it. So that was an element. And then the other element that I think people will forget when they look back on that, because of course it felt good that they gave the Eagles everything they could for 3.5 quarters, and then the Eagles blew them out at the very end. But at the same time, it was freezing that day. Freezing. Yeah. And you heard players afterwards, including Jalen Hurts, who was quoted as saying, like, it was miserable cold out there. And so, like, you're not going to play Jalen Hurts in those kind of conditions every single time. So that's the one thing I would say to that. But it is encouraging that our secondary battled the way they did against the Eagles that day. I'm not going to completely diminish it. I just want there to be the context added along with it.
Hey, you get that home field advantage, at least for the next couple of seasons in the playoffs. you can play them in the freezing cold, and Philadelphia doesn't get, much warmer in those winter months too. And if we're looking at like specifically playoff scenarios or getting over the hump here in the conference for the Bears, I think regardless, it's gonna be cold, Greg. But I know he kind of got, like you said, dampened with that injury early on. So I appreciate you adding that to the conversation too. But regardless, I think the other side of this coin that we need to look at is just like the similarities between Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields. We've been talking about that, I think, a lot over the past year in CHGO, just kind of comparing the two quarterbacks, their career trajectories and how similar they are. And even this past season, Justin's year really looks similar to what we saw out of Jalen Hurts a year ago. And it's going to ask a lot of Justin to kind of take the same exact step yet again next year. Huge, tall order for him. I don't think we need to put that pressure on his shoulders, but still, like, as much as like Jalen Hurts can worry us from a competitor standpoint, I think when you're looking at him as like a blueprint for Justin and how the Eagles were able to kind of build around Jalen and just watch him grow and blossom in Philadelphia, I think this should give Bears fans more hope that Chicago can follow suit, can do the same. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I'm with you. Like the whole game I'm watching there, I had a big smile on my face for a lot of it, saying like, well, we can do this. But then when he made some of the throws that we're talking about earlier, I'm like, well, I'm not sure that Justin's quite ready to do. Plus, I think Hurts is better right now going through his progressions. But just the style of play to what you're underlining, it absolutely excites me on where the Bears are headed. And if I'm Luke Getsy watching this, okay. We had some huge games last year. It felt great. We didn't win enough of them, but mainly that's because our defense was atrocious. So let's continue down the path that we're going down. And once talent gets around here, we should be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Luke Getsy, I'm taking a few of those plays from last night. The way they lined up formation, and then they had Jalen go left, and he was lined up one-on-one with a guy where, Jalen was just able to get an easy first down. Well, Justin Fields is going to take that for 70 yards for a touchdown. And that is the comparison game. I think we all were playing last night as Bears fans. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Jalen Hurts, but like to me, aside from some of the slants at the end of the game, when the game was on the line and he had to make a throw on third down at one point, he hit a slant in a very tight window when pressure was coming. That was a big time pocket passing throw. But the deep ball touchdown to A.J. Brown, yeah, I mean, he put it in the right landmark, the right spot. But that was all A.J. Brown, as it's been all year long. If you go watch every A.J. Brown touchdown from this year, that is just Jalen Hurts throwing it up into double coverage and A.J. Brown going and getting it. And we don't have that guy. If God forbid Justin Fields could ever have a wide receiver where you can just throw it up into double coverage and just hope for the best. I mean, he almost had one picked off the next series. The wide open throw to Devontae Smith. Justin Fields can make that throw. Getting out of the pocket a few times. Jalen Hurts did show some patience as he was drifting out of the pocket and found some open guys coming across the field. Justin Fields is good at that at times, and other times he misses it because he's just ready to go. So I think there is a lot of reason for Bears fans to say, yeah, Justin Fields can be every bit the quarterback Jalen Hurts is, but it's up to Ryan Poles to put the same kind of team around him. And they have a lot of work to do in that regard, getting an offensive line like the Eagles have and getting a wide receiver the caliber of A.J. Brown. Is Chase Claypool that guy? Some Bears fans think he is. I think he's got a lot to prove to ever live up to A.J. Brown's standards. But at the same time, he is a go-up-and-get-it guy. So, they just need to keep adding. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway, too, when you watch a game that's 38-35, and the Eagles had such a great defense all year, and the Chiefs dropped 38 on them. You gotta score points. Yeah, you're going to need a little defense to hang on for dear life, but you got to have as many weapons as you can possibly have, because eventually you're going to have to play Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and you're going to have to play keep up. So you're going to need as many weapons as you possibly can have.
Even the bomb, though, that you said a second ago to Devontae Smith, he's wide open, but there was a way in which he saw the field and let that play develop. And it wasn't even a great throw because Smith ended up going out of bounds at the 1 yard line because he wasn't in stride. But there's a way in which he's seeing the field that Justin is still working to get to. Also, what you were saying, Will, as far as the designing the plays, the Eagles, there was a solidness to what they were doing. They just knew it was going to work, putting it in his hands and doing it. There was no trickery. This is how we're running it. We're going right at you, and we're and I guess Nick Sirianni deserves credit too for his aggressiveness on fourth down. So they're 3rd and 7, they're running it. We know we're going. They were pretty convicted. Did you guys, speaking of that, by the way, side note, did you think that they were wrong to kick the field goal to go up 27-21? Were you sitting there thinking, go for it, you're going to be in trouble, you'll be up 6, and they're going to score a touchdown, and you're going to lose?
Man, for me, it's hard to sneeze at points in a Super Bowl. It really is. So I would have probably taken the points there. But hindsight is 2020, and I think you have a really good point there too, Mark. But in the game's biggest stage, if I have a chance to extend a lead, get points on the board, I feel like I have to take it.
I probably would have kicked it too, Will. But I was also like, this is trouble. You're gonna be,
It's easy to say from the couch, isn't it? And watching it, absolutely.
Yeah, I can't say that thought, because what was it on fourth down? Was it 4th and 7 or 6 or something like that? I don't want to say
it's 4th and 6. I'd have to double check, but it was 4 manageable. They were going for us a lot, but
yeah,
they were deep in the red zone, so the field's a little softer. You're going up, you got an easy put points on the board, but yeah,
and they doinked one early in the game, right?
No, that was Butker.
Oh, that was Butker. I apologize.
Yeah.
Do you think Nagy, when he heard that noise, he had a heart attack? I know. I feel every time we hear that noise, it's like seared in our mind.
Yeah, no, it's one of my least favorite sounds in the entire planet. I saw this comment from J2K, and you two are the perfect duo to answer it, or at least, I guess, add to it. But this is another great comment. He had a few in here, Joey, but the one that I saw earlier was about Justin Fields. He thinks that Justin Fields could have won that game. I talked about him breaking off a lot more yards with his legs. I know Greg specifically were talking, up Justin a little bit more here. Do you think Justin could have won that game?
I completely agree. And this is the observation I made when the day we played the Eagles. And Justin at that point had tired legs on the year. He'd carried this whole team on his back. Shoulder was injured. And if you go back and watch that Bears Eagles game, it is hilarious to watch the difference. And Jalen Hurts is a great quarterback. So this isn't taking a shot at Hurts. It just speaks to just how special Justin Fields is. If you go just back and watch that Bears Eagles game, the difference in acceleration between the two when they get out of the pocket is substantial. And we're talking about Jalen Hurts, who set all these records for, in rushing categories as a quarterback. Most rushing touchdowns in a Super Bowl, most rushing touchdowns for any player ever, running back or quarterback alike. So, yeah, I completely agree with this. And that's the observation I continued making this game, watching that game last night. I'm like, man, if the Bears could ever build a championship caliber roster around Justin Fields will be going crazy in the playoffs. Because when you get to that point, it's win or go home. He's going to do some of the things we saw this year where it's, tuck it and fuck it. I'm going to run it. I'm going to do my thing, you know? And so that's what I think is going to happen the day Ryan Poles can build this roster around him. That's right. I said it.
You said it. It's an after dark show. It's after the sun goes down, the profanities come out.
Well, I was going to say tuck it and chuck it, but that didn't make any sense because it's more about running it. So I said tuck it in. But that's how I feel. I mean, I just think who's gonna? It's like the year the Panthers got to the Super Bowl. Cam Newton just every time was like, "All right, if it's not there, I'm gonna run for the first down, and you can't stop me." He's literally the same guy, but faster and just as big. So I feel very strongly after seeing what Jalen Hurts did that Justin Fields can do every bit of what Jalen Hurts did. Just get him the weapons around him that he's got.
I'm not saying he can't do it. And by the way, I don't know if you actually can tuck it and F it. I don't know if that's possible, but perhaps it doesn't seem like that's how it works. But look, come on, we can have some level of balance here. The dude threw for 304 yards last night. Justin Fields hasn't thrown for 300 yards in a game in his career. He was also 27 of 38. I mean, Fields is not on Hurts' level yet. Now you can say that the weapons aren't there and that's why, but I do think there's a little bit more to it. Yeah, and true. Fields is faster.
Fields a lot fast. Lot, not even a little faster. A lot faster. And we're talking about a great running quarterback in Jalen Hurts. So I'm not even, like I said, not diminishing Jalen. It just speaks to the rarity that we have with Justin Fields.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Faster. But not even, I'll tell you this though, as far as pure strength of the goal line, Justin's trucking guys. Jalen that dude is chiseled. He is a physical dude. To me, hopefully it sets to be a phenomenal rivalry in the AFC. Hopefully these are the two best quarterbacks rolling and the Bears will get their F together, their S together, whatever, and we can really see this play out over the next 3 to 5 years. I think that's entirely possible. Obviously, the Bears got to hit on a lot, but I'm an optimist. It's going to happen. Let's go. Let's go, Ryan Poles.
And I totally understand. I'm making a leap as far as saying Justin can make most of the throws Jalen made last night. He's still got to prove a lot of those throws still, but at the same time, a year ago at this time, Jalen Hurts was in the exact same spot Justin Fields is currently in right now. He left the season at 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. They lost. They did make the playoffs. They didn't win a playoff game, I believe. It's been so long, I can't remember anymore. But regardless, his numbers were very similar. This is the year it exploded. Why? Well, you got A.J. Brown. And again, go watch every touchdown A.J. Brown had this season. That is just a guy throwing it up into double coverage and letting this freak in A.J. Brown go up and get it. Bears got to get that guy.
That's an important underline, too, by the way. His rookie year ended with Doug Peterson benching him for a third-string quarterback whose name escapes me right now, which is embarrassing, but I don't think anybody's going to call me out on it, so I'll leave it at that. The next year, the Eagles started 2-5. All right? Then they switched in midstream. Let's run the football. Let's go to our strength. And then they started winning games 9-8 and made the playoffs, which was an unbelievable turnaround at the time. Year later, dude's an MVP candidate, and we're talking about him being at the top of the NFC for a while. So things changed very rapidly in Philly for Hurts and the Eagles, which speaks to where the Bears perhaps are at right now. Things changed extremely rapidly here as well. I mean, they won 4 games his rookie season, and he was playing on the back end of it, and he got benched. 9-8 Super Bowl.
There we go.
Take that, by the way. 9-8 next year would be sweet, and Super Bowl 2024 and 25, great.
Yeah, it's stepping stones. I will take progress, and 9-8 would be huge progress for the Bears. Does it kind of suck to have to say that? Sure, but we all know what's in front of the Bears. We know what last season was all about, and it's just get to the next stepping stone. Well, you don't have to go from
I just put $15 on the Bears winning the Super Bowl.
I'll pay you the $15 if they go.
No, 50. I put 50 down.
Oh, that's whole different.
Different.
Never mind.
If they win, I think I get like $4,000 or something like that. Let's see what it said. Yeah, It said,
yeah, I'm not doing that payout.
Yeah, I paid $50 and I win $4,050 if they get to and win. I picked them to win the Super Bowl because I'm a believer, and I've decided because this is the first year I've ever done that. I'm going to do it every year for the next 5 years with Justin Fields because it's going to happen. It is going to happen.
Don't do
Mark,
your blasting.
You doubted me when I told you a month ago that the Northwestern Wildcats were going to make March Madness and the dance. You doubted me, and now it is going to happen. And I'm telling you, the Bears are going to win the Super Bowl with Justin Fields. It is going to happen.
It's worth your $50 for your own entertainment. So congratulations.
I'm gonna do it every year, but I'm not even worried about it because it's gonna hit in its first year. We're gonna be partying in Vegas. To the Bears.
I was gonna say we got 3 super chats that I wanted to make sure that we got. No, you're good. So I see Jonathan's on screen, so we'll start with him. A little out of order, but I know Jonathan, thanking you, Braggs, for the weekend, saying that Carm, I think those morning videos, the Rise and Shine, need some more, but they're getting better.
Okay.
And then good old Jonathan, been a big supporter of mine and Nick's really since like early Chicago Audible days. Good to be back. I appreciate it. And I appreciate your text over the weekend too. Let's get into the Bears 85, like you're mentioning, Greg. Have we talked about doing play-by-play watch parties? I know he said he would be, or they'd said they'd be personally all in. I think we've kind of like referenced that it may be something we do like for a big Bears prime time sort of game, but nothing that's ever been solidified.
Well, we did kind of do one,
right?
The Thursday night game against the Washington Commanders. If you go back, that streams. Yeah, and it's a little craziness. I don't know if we're necessarily, telling you the play-by-play, but you kind of get to sit with us and watch it. And that was a fun experience, especially the way that game ended. If you go back and watch that stream, you can see all our hearts break, collectively as Darnell Mooney drops the final pass of the game for the game-winning touchdown or what could have been. So we had done it once, but I'm sure we're going to do more here going forward.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be like an every week or an every primetime game thing, but I'm assuming we'll keep tinkering with that. I just don't think we're the play-by-play guys, per se. And then we have from Mr. Marlon Moe mentioning that the top GM second seasons were horrible, under 500, mentioning the 49ers, Bills, Eagles. Just kind of, I think, trying to exercise some patience with Ryan. I'm going to say he meant polls. If we end up, and this is his words, sucking next year. I understand where you're coming from there. Things do take time. I don't have that in front of me, so I'm going to take your word for it. And actually, we're going to talk about the Bears GM here in just a few moments. I had one final question I want to ask you guys before we move on, though, about Justin, NFL playoffs. Something I saw this year, and if you guys talked about it like on one of the day shows, I apologize, but something I noticed that I didn't really expect this postseason. And it didn't matter if the team had like a quote rushing quarterback or not, or a mobile guy, but I saw a lot of designed runs for QBs this postseason, more so than I feel like I've ever seen in a single playoff kind of like picture for every one of the teams. And I know we talk about wanting to limit that for Justin moving forward, but seeing how heavily teams wanted to tap into using their quarterback as a rusher in the postseason just gives me, again, another sense of hope and optimism, knowing that we have the best rushing quarterback in the entire league on this roster, so we can make it to that next stage. If that's a trend now in the postseason, like we have the guy to do it.
Oh, it felt so good to just underline that. That's right. This is how we're playing, and we got the best dude. I haven't heard it said like that, Will. So that makes me feel kind of googly inside. Ooh. I know it does for you too, Braggs. You googly guy, you.
Great googly moogly. That's how I feel about it. No, I mean, it's just what we've been talking about. I mean, of course you need pocket passers, but the wave of the future is dual threat quarterbacks. Josh Allen's a great pocket passer. He's still a dual threat quarterback by definition. He leads the team in rushing. I bet you he had to have been close to leading the team in rushing this year. I'm sure he was close. He rushes all the time for big yardage. Patrick Mahomes obviously is a pocket passer, but what won the game? His scramble at the end for the first down. That's what won them the game ultimately at the end. So you got to have this ability. You can't just be a guy that stands in the pocket if you want to win games in the NFL. It's just how the game is played nowadays. Yes, Justin Fields has a long way to go to still be one of those top echelon quarterbacks that can make all the throws in the pocket along with what he does in the run game. But as you guys just mentioned, he's not just good at the run game. He is the best in the NFL at the run game as a quarterback. And we just saw a quarterback in the Super Bowl make history with his legs. And we have somebody who is infinitely better than Jalen Hurts at that. And Jalen Hurts is great at that. I can't elaborate that point enough.
I'm still warming up to the fact that this is how you can win in the NFL, admittedly. Old school Carm over here. And we had Dan Hampton, Super Bowl champion, Hall of Famer, on. We just uploaded that to YouTube. If you want to check that video out at CHGO Sports, please do. You know, he doesn't think that you can win this way. So there is a lean into this is how teams play now. This is how QBs play now, that the Bears made that change midway through the season, right? And I still think objectively they're trying to really figure out how they can best underline, support, take advantage of the quarterback that they have, right? It's still a work in progress. I think we would all agree on that.
Of course.
Yeah, I don't think there's any disagreement there. I just feel like when we saw Justin playing that really strong stretch of football towards the second half of the season, like the early portion of it, when he was running, he started to start making those plays with his arm. The Bears were scoring points in bunches. The only problem was we were giving up too many points when we were scoring over 30 points a game. Like that should not be a problem. And you get here into the postseason and you see all these teams scoring points in bunches. And I feel like if the Bears can just get that defense to somewhat to like just serviceable and at least average and keeping teams out of the end zone, like the win total next season will come. And I know there's a lot more work to happen on offense, the line. This all just, I guess, is understood on my end. Like that has to happen. It will happen.
Well, Jimmy says it in the chat here. He says mobile quarterbacks do not win the Super Bowl. Pocket or hybrid QBs win the Super Bowl. And I get it. Lamar Jackson's never won a Super Bowl. Cam Newton and Jalen Hurts are the two closest of like true dual threat quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl. Cam Newton even more so, like, you know, a run first type of quarterback. And at the end of the day, Cam on the final drive couldn't get it done. That's why I was so frustrated with the end of the last night's game, where they call the holding penalty and we don't get to see Jalen Hurts have the opportunity to go down and win the game as a dual threat quarterback, because there's so many dual threat quarterbacks now. It's a law of averages. Eventually, a guy that is more of a run first quarterback that can also throw will win a Super Bowl. There's just so many of them now. It's only a matter of time. And there's these, you know, the old traditionalists are holding on to this, you know, you have to be a, you know, pocket passer to win a Super Bowl. Those days are starting to dim. And a guy like Justin Fields absolutely can win a Super Bowl with the right talent around him.
And real quickly, too, just on Jimmy's point, like, at least for Justin specifically, I would classify him more as a hybrid who had to run so much this year just due to the lack of weapons at receiver, due to the offensive line giving him zero time. He mentioned it towards the end of the year, like, I don't want to be doing this. Like, I would rather sit back there and pass the ball. That's my goal next year. I don't want to have to run this much. I really would prefer to be a passing first quarterback, and I believe him. And the fact that he wants to do that, I'm sure the Bears are going to build around it. And he has the talent, as I mentioned, to be the best at the game with his legs. I think that's just what makes him special, what makes him unique. And we haven't even really got to see that part yet. We saw glimpses of, I think, like the subset skill set that he brings to the table that makes him special. And we still have to find ways to tap into the primary skill set as a passer that I believe he possesses. I believe he knows he has. And the Bears just need to find a way to build around it to let him fly.
Low-key left turn here. Braggs, what's going on with the Dairy Queen soda? And did you have lunch there or something? What, dinner?
No, I just took my daughter. We went to the park, and in order to get her to get in the car, I said we'd go get ice cream. And we did. Got her an ice cream cone, and I got me a drink. That's what's up with this cup. But I figured somebody's going to say something one time when I drank it and saw that I was promoting DQ on the show.
No, it's cool. Dairy Queen, we'd love to have you be a sponsor. I think that's great. I just Will, correct me if I'm wrong. It's just not normal that all of a sudden out of nowhere you get the big DQ glass.
We don't usually get the
bingo. All right.
We don't usually get the product placement for those fast food chains here on the show. So you're right. It stood out. I actually worked at Dairy Queen for a couple of years.
You worked at DQ?
Right. My senior year of high school and then my first year of college. Yes.
I worked at DQ as well.
I wasn't allowed to make the ice cream. They're like, you make burgers, man. I tried making one cone and it was like all over my hand. So they shoved me right to the back.
And I worked at DQ in high school as well. I loved working the drive-through because then I could like the brownie bites. I could take, one brownie, one for me, one for the customer.
I did that with the cheese curds. Oops.
Now, the funniest thing I ever did at Dairy Queen was I once I stole a box of, because nerds, I stole a box of nerds. I was throwing all the boxes away and I, put one box in my car that was still full. And we opened the box up when we got to my house with my friends. I'm like, look what I got. I pull this out and it's this giant bag of nerds. It was the funniest thing. And they were like, why did you do this? And I was like, because why not? So I just admitted to a felony. I don't know what I just did.
Okay.
You just did on live podcasting air here on YouTube. And we'll be on our podcast feed later. We're not going to edit that out. Who knows what the statute of limitations are on that, but we may find out soon.
Hourly wage at DQ, anybody remember?
No.
I mean, for me, it was $7.25.
Yeah, I don't remember.
The reason why the Blizzard is so expensive now at Dairy Queen is because Bragg was stealing product for years on end. Bragg screwed all of us.
There we go. All right. So up next, we're going to talk about Ryan Poles and his connections to the Chiefs and how that should help frame your mindset for this offseason. Before we do, just one simple message for you all. If you haven't heard it before, I'm sure you have, though. It's if you haven't become a CHGO diehard, like really, what are you waiting for here? There's a ton of great reasons to do so. I love our happy hours that we've been starting to do here this year, which is like we all hop on a Zoom session, like whether it be like CHGO Bears or White Sox, and then you get to join us and we all just kind of sit around, have a few drinks, share a lot of laughs and hang out. Takes us one step closer to you. I think that's been a tremendous addition to our repertoire here. And then you get a bunch of discounts, 20% off all of our merch all of the time. If we're running like a Black Friday sale, you get that discount on top of it. Of course, 20% off all of our tailgates, which we all had a blast doing last season for the Bears, and so much more. You can go to allchgo.com/diehard right now. You can learn all the details and sign up today and join our, I guess I would say, ever growing and buzzing community here at CHGO. And Greg, I want you to tell everyone one reason why they should become a diehard. Give me your favorite reason.
Well, I mean, I think our happy hours are certainly top notch. We've done a bunch of them now here. We've done like three or four with CHGO Bears, but we do, happy hours with every team, whether it be Cubs, Sox, Blackhawks, Bulls, Bears teams. And if you don't know what the happy hour is, but what I mean by that is we all just jump into Zoom, kind of like what we're doing here, but it's through Zoom. We all hang out for an hour and a half or so. We talk about anything, life or specifically the sports, if anybody has any questions, and we have a good time and get to know each other on a more personal level. And, having all these loyal listeners that are here in the chat to be able to put a face to some of the names that we see in these chats is really cool for me. And it seems like the people that are joining, as far as the diehards that are joining, are enjoying it as well. So that's certainly my favorite part about it.
Carm?
Well, for me, the tailgates was just amazing, and I love that we give value when you become a diehard on that side. Going to the diehard Bulls thing was awesome. I had a great time at that game, and to what you guys are saying about hanging out, let's do a Zoom, let's talk. And even down in Arizona for the Super Bowl, just the Bears fans that came out to meet us at the bar, which wasn't a diehard event, but I just want to underline the support that you guys are giving us. It means a ton to all of us here. We obviously are still a new thing and we're growing, and we appreciate and need the support. So it's been a huge blessing to see the regulars in there. I mean, like, and anyone new for that matter too. But like just looking at the chat line right now, Daniel and Gary, we see you guys all the time. It's been super rewarding to see that the connections that we're building. So, and the diehard we get to see in person. So it just feels great for me.
Awesome. Thanks guys for giving some of your own input and your own words. I think that kind of helps kind of solidify what being a diehard is all about and just give our listeners more reasons to, want to have to join. But let's get back into tonight's show. And like I said, I want to talk about Ryan Poles, because one thing that I've been thinking about throughout this day is like, you know what? The guy who's in charge of rebuilding the Bears was instrumental in building that roster that we saw yesterday here for the Chiefs. And obviously, like Kansas City, they've been in the Super Bowl, a few times now over the past 2 years, but they're not the same team that they were the last time. There's been a couple of years in between. They had to kind of retool and rebuild. And when you look at what Poles is able to do, I kind of did some digging right before the show. So in 2021, he was the executive director of player personnel. And in just that one offseason, he signed Orlando Brown Jr., drafted backup. He drafted Creed Humphreys, the starting lineman for them, drafted their backup tight end Noah Gray, signed running back Jerick McKinnon, and drafted their starting middle linebacker Nick Bolton. That's just one offseason. And I just got guys that are starting or at least contribute. And then if you want to go back for the next 2 years, he was the assistant director of player personnel, drafted L'Jarius Sneed, drafted Willie Gay, signed Frank Clark, drafted Juan Thornhill, and drafted Mecole Hardman. It's like 9 of 22 starters for this Super Bowl team came due to Ryan Poles tweaking it. And if you want to go back further, he was still instrumental in building that core. Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, like he's go back to even Tyreek Hill. Like he's a big reason why they've been able to sustain their success. And I know a lot of Bears fans, I mean, we see it in the chat almost every episode. Impatience with what happened last offseason. It wasn't enough. We saw the results, and they're kind of worried heading into this offseason, despite all of the resources, that we may be in store for the same. Now, I don't believe that's the case. I don't think either of you two believe that's the case, but just knowing like all the fingerprints that Ryan Poles still has on that Chiefs team that just won a Super Bowl, like should that excite Bears fans? Like we have that guy is literally in charge of building this team around Justin Fields. And I think he's the guy to do it. I'm just curious to your thoughts on Poles, his connections to the Chiefs still, what they're able to accomplish, and what's that mean for the Bears here for the biggest offseason in franchise history.
Go ahead, Braggs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel great about that. This is who we are trying to mirror ourselves off of in a lot of ways as far as, building a franchise. Same with the Eagles. I mean, Ian Cunningham coming from the Eagles, I like that there's a connection on both sides of the field when it comes to these guys. And with Ian Cunningham being a part of a team that has done some trade downs, trade backs in the last couple of years, I like that element. Ryan Poles, people are at this point where they feel like they have to have like a definitive opinion on him one way or the other, and I can't understand for the life of me people that are out on him or not happy with how he handled the first season, when I feel like he did everything that he had to do to get this team on the right track, salary cap wise. And oh, by the way, found their way into the number 1 pick. Maybe Ryan wasn't intentionally trying to do that. I have a hard time believing that when you see the players they signed. And I know they tried to sign a few guys that ended up not coming here. So it's not like they weren't trying necessarily. But at the same time, I like the way Ryan Poles carries himself. I have trust in him to build this offensive line because that's his background. So, I know Gary's very hard on Orlando Brown. He don't want Orlando Brown. They didn't give up a sack yesterday. Brian Baldinger had a breakdown on Twitter today about how good of a job Orlando Brown did. Yeah, I'm not an offensive line expert. We talked about this the last couple weeks. Gary's very, Gary, who's a loyal listener in our chat every day, he's very hardline about this. He does not want to overpay for Orlando Brown. I don't know. I don't think it's the worst thing that could happen to the Bears if we get a guy like that and you slide Braxton Jones over to the right tackle. We need guys. And, beggars can't be choosers. Who's available? But I also trust Ryan Poles to build this offensive line properly. They tried to sign Ryan Bates, the offensive lineman from the Bills. Bills match the offer sheet. He's a solid offensive lineman, right, guys? I mean, I don't know. You tell me. But they're trying to pluck from the Bills offensive line. Okay, that's a good sign. Let's try to get good talent in here, and I think Ryan Poles can do that.
I mean, listen, you go back and look at Ryan Poles' career in Kansas City. He comes in right out of college as a scouting assistant. He's immediately promoted the next year to college scouting coordinator, where he stayed for 5 seasons. And then he becomes the director of college scouting, as Will saw, and then the assistant director of player personnel and executive director of player personnel. So all that's great. What I like about it is, he's hired by Scott Pioli, who I have not great thoughts about, but John Dorsey kept him. And that's, one of the more respected football men in the NFL, who knows exactly what he's doing, did a phenomenal job in Green Bay. And then you look at the records of what happened in Kansas City. He came in, they were 4-0, they miracle run in 2010 with Todd Haley and Matt Castle, but that team sucked and they lost to the wild card. They were just kind of a miracle season. And then they were bad, 7-9, 2-14. But you see, when he's there for a while, they've been over 500, the Chiefs, since 2013. 11 wins, 9 wins, 11, 12, 10, and then here comes, okay, now we're getting to the meat of it. We got Patrick Mahomes. They made a phenomenal trade to do it, and they become the Kansas City Chiefs. But he was very much a part of an organization that had been in the shitter for a long time. I mean, they were bad. They hadn't won a playoff game since 93. They were a under 500 team from 2007, with the exception of 2010. And then he got in the organization. I'm not giving him all the credit, but he at least was part of an organization that turned it. So, and who exactly he was in on which players, I think that's a little murky, but it's, you see the end result, and I think that's got to make you feel good about Poles.
Exactly that. And I saw a comment here from Casey about like how many of the Super Bowl offensive linemen was Poles like responsible for finding. I think when I did it was like 60 or 80% of them. I would have to pull up the depth chart and cross-reference yet again, and it was both free agency and the draft. It was a combination of the two, which again excites me because it shows that he can evaluate the draft talent and also hit those home runs in free agency that matter. And they had a lot of turnover of actually losing guys. Remember how bad that offensive line was? Like, what was it, 4 seasons ago, give or take? And it was like the big talk of like, oh my God, like that was awful. You have to like scrap that and try again. That only may have been a couple of years ago. Time goes by so fast, yet so slow in the NFL, I swear. But
it'd be interesting to see how he approaches free agency, because he strikes me as a guy that doesn't want to overpay for guys. And I see people talking about that in the chat. He doesn't strike me as that type of guy, especially this early in what he's building. Is he going to attack for these big name targets for like a win now thing this year? I mean, as a fan, I hope so, because I want to win right now. I want to start having fun starting week 1 next year. But he also strikes me as a guy that's diligent and patient and building it the right way, building through the draft. But he has all this money, and I know we have a certain amount that we have to spend. So it'll just be interesting to see how that shakes out. And then as far as the draft is concerned, I thought he did a very solid job in a draft where they didn't have a first-round pick. And then an undrafted free agent in Jack Sanborn. He had guys that are going to be players that are impact players going into next season. So I'm excited to see what Ryan Poles can do.
I like his demeanor. I don't want to go too crazy on last year's draft, although I think overall, no question, it's a win when you look at it. The Claypool thing, we'll see. But in essence, he's done the easy part. Tore it down, got assets. Now, I'll tell you, media night at the Super Bowl, and I'm talking to Howie Roseman for 2 minutes of that whole night. So I don't want to act like I'm Mr. Best Friends with Howie, and I really understand him deeply. But there was a shrewdness in those couple of minutes that was overly noticeable. And a lot of people were grilling him about the A.J. Brown trade, and I was one of those people, in which perhaps was not the most creative question because he got it 100 times. But I think that's the essence of what the Bears are going to have to do here. Get assets, acquire guys who become available, who can be close to elite, and be great in your drafting, and not even and also at the same time have enough pieces moving around that you can miss, because you're going to miss, but
exactly
as long as you hit enough, even Jalen Reagor missed at the top, and still, hey, we got AJ Brown, we got Devontae Smith, we are okay. We got plenty of weapons for Jalen Hurts. I asked him too. I said, hey Howie, How did you, get comfortable to mortgage picks to give Jalen Hurts the option? Well, we had to find out if he could do it. So they didn't know. But the only way they were going to really find out is if they gave it to him, which is
right.
That's the exact position the Bears are in right now.
Right. He said we can't make a fair evaluation on a guy until he has the right talent around him, which is such a fair statement to make, to expect Justin Fields to do this with nobody and have a definitive, assumption of the kind of player he's going to be is wrong. Give him the talent first, then make your determination.
And Poles wouldn't have made the trade for Claypool if he didn't know that.
I agree.
That was aggressive.
And he made it because right in that moment, Justin Fields was starting to set on fire, and that's why I was excited for the move, and I think we all underestimated just how long it would take Chase Claypool to catch on. And I was definitely disappointed that it never facilitated into any kind of chemistry before the season ended, because I felt like they were getting ahead of it, even though, I understand they were trying to get ahead of it free agency wise, but at the same time, there could have been chemistry built, but there were two factors that went into it. A, Chase Claypool had trouble assimilating to the offense, and B, Justin Fields got hurt. And then Darnell Mooney got hurt, which changes the whole complexion of the offense. Yes. So there's a lot of context in there that I think gets lost when you just want to make the general statement that the Chase Claypool trade is now a bust. We don't know that yet until next year.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It would have been amazing to allow those dividends to start getting paid sooner. But I'm remaining patient.
Let me raise my hand and say I'd rewind that trade right now. I'd love to do that.
And I wouldn't blame you for it. I'm not going to blame you for having that take right now.
We can't do that.
But at this point, we just got to hope that Chase Claypool balls out. He's in a contract year. He has every reason to go off, and he has the talent. He has shown it at the NFL level. So it's not like, for the fans that want to believe that this can work out for the best, it's not like he's never shown it at the NFL level. He has. Now he has to show it with Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears.
Fields needs to become best buddies with Claypool like I became best buddies with Nicholas Moreano in the same room, which I don't know if you ever have had sleepovers with Nicholas Moreano for a week, but let me tell you something. It is a true privilege, and then one that I do make. It was amazing. Dude snores like a champion, Will. Your audible guy is a snoring beast of a man. God bless him.
I've had to share some hotel rooms. I've heard those legendary snores, as you put it there, Mark. So real quickly, something that just came to my mind. So we keep talking about this offseason in two phases. You have free agency and the draft, and both are going to be, imperative for the Bears if they want to be, a winning team next season, to hit on both. But how sneaky of a role can you envision like the waiver wire playing in for the Bears here, with them having that top priority throughout the entire offseason? Like, could that actually have like a sneaky impact that we're not like talking enough about right now? Because the more I think about it, like, yeah, absolutely. Because all these guys, you got these cap casualties coming up, trade partners or not, they're going to get released, and the Bears have, pickings there.
Well, that's what I want to ask you, Will, is because I've seen people bring this up, and I guess I'm not clear on how this works. Is because I always looked at a waiver wire thing as something that teams take advantage of in training camp when a player gets released and you're the first on the waiver wire. A, we can start doing waiver wire pickups. How early is my question? And then B, once you make one waiver claim, is it like fantasy football where you make one waiver claim and then you move to the back of the line, or are you still at the front? Those are the two things I don't understand.
So I believe the waiver opens up. So I'm looking at Field Yates' tweet from earlier today, and he says the NFL's waiver period for 2023 begins today. Players with less than 4 years of experience are subject to the waivers, and the waiver order is the same as the original 2023 draft orders. That means the Bears are first in the waivers for anyone that gets cut here starting today who has less than 4 years or more experience. And if they do get cut, they can sign with another team immediately if they clear waivers. But technically the Bears could scoop them up. I just don't know what it would cost them at this stage right now. I guess it would probably depend on the player.
And then once you make one waiver claim, do you move to the back of the line, or do they stay up there?
I think they stay put throughout the offseason. If I remember correctly, we haven't had many off seasons like this where it matters this much. So I think we're all learning as we go. But my current understanding is the Bears should sit there through the offseason and potentially through preseason. which again, that's pretty huge.
There's some really interesting names out there, particularly one who I think Bears fans probably remember. Bears traded for him in 2018 and traded him away last year. Khalil Mack's got an $18 million cap hit with those Chargers, and the word on the street is that they'd rather do a restructured deal with him. And I don't think he's coming back here, but that is a name that would be shocking and stunning and partly exhilarating for Bears fans. Highly, highly unlikely, but certainly they could use him. And I also look at Minnesota and Adam Thielen. The Vikings could very well be cutting of one of their key receivers. Now he's not a dynamic number one, but I would think he could make a huge impact down here.
And a report came out today, and somebody asked in the chat too, Michael Thomas, the maligned, wide receiver, very talented from the New Orleans Saints. That's another guy that I think you'd have to consider at least helping the depth, not necessarily slotting in as your star wide receiver, but certainly somebody that can start help adding to this depth that they sorely need.
Long answer, long. Will. Yeah, right. I mean, any which way, draft, big time free agent, waiver wire, we're open for business, or the Bears are open for business. And period. End of story. Right.
And a bunch of people
A
bunch of people in the chat are saying that they stay number one throughout. Nomad, who certainly has a good knowledge of the game, at least from the interactions I've had with him in spaces. Mark, he's saying that they stay number one in the waiver wire until week 1 of the season. So that's great.
I've seen week 3 floated around. I don't know, but regardless, I can feel good saying at least until week 1, maybe more.
That's amazing. That's such a huge advantage there too. And
I think
it's all about turning the roster over, right? And keep picking guys up and rolling that roster over until you get the right combination.
And it shows too, like the Bears have to spend a certain amount of money, as we mentioned, but to be calculated and patient and then waiting for those waivers to kind of, those cuts to happen, whether it be pre-free agency, post-free agency, pre-draft, post-draft, training camp. There's so many different stages here where you can get good talent getting cut. As long as you keep your financial flexibility and you feel like they're a good fit and you have the room, you can pick them up. And that's really big here for the Bears. All right, one final topic I want to make sure we get on here tonight before we go, because weirdly enough, Greg actually alluded to it way earlier in the episode about defense. And does it actually matter as much as we would all hope to believe as Bears fans, right? Defense wins championships. I understand it. But when I look at last night's game, only 4 punts, 1 turnover all game. You see a lot of third downs and fourth downs being converted on. 5 of the last 7 Super Bowl winners had to score 31 or more points. So I'm just curious, does defense take a back seat or a priority B for this rebuild here for the Bears, or does a game like this show you the importance of actually having a defense and what it could do to your chances? I feel like the Eagles defense is so good, and then you just see what happened and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I'm like, ooh, do you really want to invest all of that just to give up 35 points in the Super Bowl? And then if you just look a little bit further, I have a few more numbers for you, Greg, so I will take it slow. Every team this year in the wild card round scored 31 or more to win, with 23 points being the lowest total that week by a losing team that round. That's a lot of points scored all the way across the league in the playoffs. If you go to the divisional round, 19 was the lowest total by a winning team. That was the 49ers. The other 3 winners had to score 27 or more points. The Chiefs scored 23, which is the lowest total of the actual championship weekend. And then, of course, 38-35 last night. But again, when the one last I want to throw out there is teams that scored at least 30 points in games in the postseason, they went 8-3 in the postseason this year by scoring at least 30 points. So is it more important to have a defense that can limit points, or is it being the trend now where it's actually more important to at least hit that 30 mark here on offense in the postseason? Because I think 8-3 is a really strong number. And of course, one of the losers were last night in Philadelphia. So a great example, but I'm just curious about your thoughts about where defense stands in today's modern NFL, as the Bears need to keep that in mind as they rebuild.
Well, if you're making a priority list, scoring is paramount. Scoring is number 1 on the priority list, but you can't diminish defense, even though we're getting high numbers as far as final scores. The Philadelphia Eagles didn't get one stop in the second half of the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes went 13 of 14 in the second half. They get one stop and the game is over. They can win the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs, as Mark said, Bolton goes for a fumble six, a pick six, for a defensive touchdown. That was 7 of the 38 points scored by the Chiefs. So you need defense to do just enough. When you get to the Super Bowl, you're playing all-time great quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, who can put a 30 burger on you no matter how good your defense is. And they, Mahomes proved that last night, or the Chiefs as a team proved that. I feel like in a big team effort win last night that they showed with special teams and everything else. But still, 38 points on a team that the Eagles had like 88 sacks this season, and they didn't get one sack last night. But at the same time, you gotta have something there to keep the numbers somewhat down, to keep you in a puncher's chance to beat the great Pat Mahomes.
Well, let's not forget too, the Chiefs got to the Super Bowl because they were able to stop Joe Burrow, and Frank Clark was able to get to the quarterback, and that changed the trajectory of a game that looked like it was going to go straight to Cincinnati, and they were going to beat the Chiefs once again. But it's tricky, right, Will? Like, unfortunately, you got to have it all. You have to have a high-powered offense, or it's not going to be enough. And if you can't ever get off the field, I'm not saying you can just win with defense every week, but it's got to be there to occasionally be able to do it. And when Kansas City didn't win the Super Bowl, when the Bucs got them, which we were talking about the offensive line, that's 3 years ago, 2020, and then last year when they didn't win, the Bills they couldn't stop Buffalo. They also didn't have an offensive line. So you got to be able to protect the quarterback. I mean, we get to the quarterback. Got to have the quarterback too that can do it. Like, it's just hard to win, man. 30 teams. You're going to have to go through Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts or whoever the next is coming along. Joe Burrow is a huge problem. It's
Tom Brady comes back from the dead.
Aaron Rodgers ends up the Jets are kind of a sexy. You want to go on DraftKings right now and make a wager on who's going to win the Super Bowl next year and get good odds. I don't mind that play at all.
Oh, you just drew up the scenario, Mark. You just did. The Bears get to the Super Bowl next year. I got my $4,000 ticket. We're holding in our hands while we're in Vegas, and they have to play Aaron Rodgers to slay the dragon and win the Super Bowl. You just drew it up right there. That's what's going to happen. It's a eureka moment.
I hope you're right, brother. Yeah.
Hey, Mark, while you're stumbling around, do you want to address the super chat real quick?
Breaking. Quani B just tweeted, enjoy it now because we on the way from our guy, the Duke. Inject it into my veins. Bears Super Bowl next year. The Bears. Claypool, 1,500-yard season. We lead the league in sacks and takeaways next year. Duke, I don't know where you live. I don't know when you're having a party, but wherever it is and whenever you're doing it, I'm on the way, brother. Let's go.
Pull up his other super chat because he had one earlier that we didn't address. Because I had said I put $50 down on the Bears to win the Super Bowl. That's going to get me $4,000. He's claiming, and we know the Duke, owns an island somewhere, and he must have good Wi-Fi service there to tune in every day to CHGO and CHGO Bears. But he says he's putting $5,000 down on that bet. So I don't even know how much that'll get in return. But it sounds like me and Duke going to have a great time in Vegas next year. So I love it.
We can do the math here real quick. So you're betting 50 and you're going to get 4,000.
Yeah.
I think that's $400K because it's 100 more than you put down.
Duke.
It's going to be,
you're my new best friend. If we hit on this bet, you're already my best friend, but
8 times 5.
Then we're going another level.
Let me guess. You did not dominate math class. You were phenomenal in English, but math was not the thing.
Algebra 2, senior year, they put me in, scheduled me for an Algebra 2 class. I walked in. It was Coach Johnson, our high school basketball coach. He wrote some, formulas on the chalkboard, and he said, "If you do not know these formulas, get out of my classroom." And me and 3 other people stood up and walked out of the classroom and went to the library. We were not allowed back to that class the rest of the year. We had to reassign.
Tells me all I need to know.
Yeah. You just took me to Miss Pavlakis' class where me and Chris Carter were told, instead of acting like idiots in the front row, just put your head down and keep your head down for all of class. And then when class is over, you can get up and leave. No problem, Pavlakis. We got you. I regret that, by the way.
Hey, but Duke, I'm feeling you, and I'm just gonna keep saying it. The Bears can find their way to being a playoff team. I'm not gonna call them a championship caliber team, but they find their way into the playoffs. Justin Fields is going to run wild. If they find their way to the playoffs, that means they're good enough. And if they can get there, then all of a sudden you have to stop Justin Fields. And a guy that has shown he will do whatever it takes to get the first down, to get the win. And he is tough to catch. He's tough to bring down by all accounts of players that line up against him, including players that were in the Super Bowl this year. So, I think it's I think it's interesting because we got the X factor. We got the guy, and now it's Ryan Poles' job to build around him and get the fruits of Justin Fields' labor.
We got one more super chat from the Duke, who just kind of continues to, this conversation, stating, "Hell yes, Braggs and Carm will watch us party in the VIP section while we eat steaks seasoned with gold shavings." I want one of those steaks too. Come on.
That's
amazing. We'll invite you. As long as Northwestern doesn't beat my Boilermakers in the Big Ten tournament, we may invite Carm too. But Will, you're definitely invited. Carm's on the hot seat with what he did to me yesterday.
That's a good way to full recap of the show.
I was going to say, anything else you guys want to say before I put a bow on the show?
No.
Bear down, baby. Good to be with you guys.
So you did 30 minutes of Big Ten talk, but we'll do that tomorrow night on CHGO Big Ten After Dark.
There we go. All right. I just want to thank everyone. First of all, I did tweet yesterday, like I was dealing with a medical issue throughout the majority of this month that's really just had me worried. And a lot of people kind of reached out to me. I would say thank you. The test came back good. So 2 thumbs up there, feeling a lot better about everything, which is awesome. Just for everyone to know, I had like a growth on my arm, which is never fun to find once you turn, 30 and you're like, oh shit, what's going on? And you're looking at your baby and you're like, I want to make sure I'm here to see him grow up. And then the doctor's like, yeah, we got to get that tested. So my anxiety went like through the roof and the medical system's slow. So it took like a month to do all of that. Thank God I can breathe. I just want to thank everyone who reached out for that. And of course, I want to thank everyone who tuned in here for tonight's episode of CHGO Bears After Dark. Had a lot of fun with Carm and Greg and just talking Chicago Bears like we do each and every Monday night. If you haven't yet, head over to Apple Podcasts, rate, review our show. I would love to hear you and your thoughts about Big Ten basketball and how much we talk about it here on this show. I'm sure those would be lovely, but for real, if you have some comments on our show, if you just want to kind of help us grow, a great way is by leaving a review over an Apple Podcast. And again, go to allchgo.com/diehard to learn more about our awesome diehard membership experience and how you can join and really just sign up. I'd love to see you join our Discord, and I'll be one of the first to say hello. But that's going to do it for tonight's episode. I will see you all on Thursday. These guys will see you a little bit sooner. But until next time, bear down, Chicago.